Who dat to you, Saints fans? It is time for us to sit down together as a family and go over the NFL draft. Specifically, I want to focus on what is the most valuable pick for the Saints. And obviously, the key answer is going to be how they perform, duh, but also who we think can have the best immediate contribution. And I'm very curious to see if there is agreement on that one. So, I personally like a lot of the things that New Orleans did. I don't necessarily love the trade up that they did in the second round. I understand the logic behind it. I wasn't the biggest fan of it, but I want to talk about that. And what we're not going to talk about tonight, we might talk about Thursday, but I still got too much frustration in me. We do need to talk about the Pels. Not tonight. I got too much frustration in me. But we do need to talk about the Pels. So we're going to do that on another night. The Pels getting swept. I'm just going to say this piece. Get rid of BI. Sorry. Not sorry. I feel like this team needs to build around one person. And if I had to build around one person, I think the team is better with Zion than they are with BI if you didn't have the other opposite. And I don't feel like they work great with each other anyway. So, yep, that's my opinion. Let's get some hoodas out there to those who are in the chat. Greatly appreciate you. Love every single one of you. Hoodat to you. Glad that you're here. Brian W. the second, Chemo Slice, Jermaine Rollins, Brennan Jack, James Griffon, Javier Arias, D'Antonio, It's Poppy, DeAndre Bailey, Steel Bill, TJ, Dr. Billy Ocean. Hoodat to you. Everybody that is here in the chat today. Zoe, Eric Sr. Hope y'all are having an absolutely fantastic evening, and it's really, really good to see everybody. Peyto, good to see you, man. Been a while. Good to see you. So, obviously, New Orleans came out way with what I wanted, which was 7 draft picks. Now, they ended up not getting a 3rd or 4th rounder, which I was personally surprised about, but I do like the names that they went and grabbed throughout the draft. So, let's go over them in the beginning. We had Delise Fuaga, which personally, very happy about this one. I think that there are other options that maybe people could have liked, but I feel like he's ready to go right now on that right side if you need him. Does seem like you're going to need him, so that's a good one. Kool-Aid McKinstry. This one I feel like is going to be one of the ones that keeps the New Orleans secondary good for years to come. I know it's addressing a position of depth, but I think what we need to really harp on is, look, guys, there's absolutely nothing at all, ever wrong with making your best group better. Always take BPA when you can. Then they went and got Spencer Rattler with their 3rd pick, quarterback out of South Carolina. I have no issue with basically any 5th round pick. No matter who you say, I'm going to be like, yeah, sure, cool, no big deal. I've got no issue with it. I would say that there's a lot of upside and potential there, like there is with a lot of guys. But at the same time, I'm not going to get too excited about him. I don't think that he's game changing and he's going to potentially turn into a stud. I think it's an opportunity to see if Clint Kubiak can develop. We'll have to wait and see. I'm not going to get too crazy about it. Then you got Bud Memes, who I actually do like the Bud Memes pick. I feel like it fits New Orleans very well. I mean, it basically is a budget split in type of choice. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying budget in like an insulting way, or at least I'm not trying to say budget in an insulting way, but you got him in the 5th round. So what did you get when you got Bud Memes? So one, you got the size that you look for at the position. You got 6'1", 215, really nice or a decent wingspan. He's got a 4.4 40. He's not the most explosive guy. Decent 10-yard, 1.55. His vertical jump was like 39.5. I mean, he was a good athlete. Not the strongest guy at the line. That tends to happen with longer arm guys. And I got to see him play at Louisiana Tech. The only real season that I got to watch would obviously be 2021 when he had 11 games there. But then he went on and basically would play with 3 different teams. He went from Tennessee, Tech, and then wrapped it on up in Pittsburgh. So definitely bounced around a little bit of an older receiver, but I still think the fit is really well for New Orleans. I feel like he's got the big receiver size with decent speed. Definitely some things that he can get better at. His stop-start is not very impressive. He definitely doesn't always keep his foot on the gas. Like, he doesn't stay on that 5th gear as much as you would want. And I feel like he could be much better at leveraging corners in his breaks. But these are all things that can be worked on when you got talking about a guy in the 5th round. And one thing I loved about him coming out of the interview process, he talked about, hey, we're blockers around here. He's big on blocking. So obviously that's That's big for New Orleans. Then you went and got big Jalen Ford, which I am excited about, but at the same time, not. So I'm not excited because I don't feel like you're probably going to see him on the field a ton right now. I think he'll do a lot of early special teams work. Love his athleticism. I think that his biggest weakness, though, is I just don't feel like he has good field presence and good field instincts. Like, I don't feel like he's a good field general, at least in college. I went back and watched some of his tape. I don't feel like he reads the field very well and attacks it. And there's actually a stat that can kind of back this up. If you look at his stats, and this is kind of wild to me. Look at his stats. He basically has the same number of assists as solo tackles. And that's pretty rare for a guy that you literally look to be your general. It shows indecisiveness, definitely shows sometimes an ability to overcommit. And I'm not saying he's a bad player, but he got 101 total tackles. But when half of those are assisted, usually you're looking for your field general to be leading the way, not be in the way. And I feel like that was a problem with him at times. But the good news is you have two really good backers in front of him, so he has time to develop and time to work on that. And I think that there are some things that he does really well. I feel like he pursues the perimeter and defends the perimeter very well. You could definitely use him as a strong side linebacker if you wanted to go to a traditional base set in a 4-3. I think that the interception totals are a little misleading. I feel like he was in some good spots, but at the same time, to get 6 picks as a linebacker, hard to argue that, especially in a 5th-round pick. And I think he's a very, very athletic player. I mean, very athletic player. His broad jump was over 10 feet, very explosive, and you can see that on the field. It's just, can the mental adjust to the NFL level? Then you got Christian Boyd, big boy, strong boy. This feels like the replacement for Colin Saunders that everybody wants. This man set the school record for the 225 bench press. This man is strong. Like, he is grown man strong. Grown man strong. Very, very, very much. Very, 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 very much. Very much. Very much. Like, I can't stress that this man's strong. I love this pick. I don't know how much time he'll see early on, but I will say this. It feels like they are setting themselves up for the future with this one. It was really, really, that's one of the ones that I'm probably the most excited about. And then last but not least, you got Josiah Zerum out of Eastern Kentucky. Another one that has high athletic scores, which coming from a small school. You picked him up in the 7th round. Very curious to see what happens. He does not have high-end production, like he did not go against high-end talent. Great strong hands, though. And I definitely noticed technique is an issue when it comes to, like, he is just used to dominating people. He'll lean into people and everything. He's used to dominating by just being simply better than everybody. 6'6", 330. That's a big man. It's a big man. But I'm very excited about them as pickups. To give you a full list of every rookie that New Orleans currently has on the roster, you got Talise. I'm going to go by position on down. So wide receivers, you got Bub Means, who they drafted. You also have Mason Tipton, another one to keep an eye out for, as well as Kyle Sheets and Jermaine Jackson. At offensive line, you've got Talise Fuaga, you got Josiah Azirum, the two that we drafted, as well as Kyle Hergel, Sincere Hainsworth, Nuruddin Nuli. I can't pronounce that one's name. I'm so sorry. You did bring in Spencer Rattler, of course, but you do have at running back Jacob Kadobe, as well as Dallin Holker at tight end. Over on the defensive side, on the D-line, you've got Nate Latu. Nice. Trajan Jeffcoat, Kyler Ball. You've also got Christian Boyd. And then in linebacker, Isaiah Stalbert to go along with Jalen Ford, who they drafted. And then in the secondary, you drafted Kool-Aid McKinstry and then brought in Rico Payton, Millard Bradford, and Lawrence Johnson. So, now it's time for chat. You tell me what y'all think about all this right now. Very, very curious to see who's going to be the best of this group. But I do feel like New Orleans, once again, shows that they have a very good scouting department. And I'm happy. That's the best thing that I can say. Best thing I can say, I'm just sitting here thinking, the best thing I can say is this draft addressed everything that needed to be addressed. with one exception, just one. But other than that, I'm pretty happy about it. I feel like this is a good draft. I mean, you didn't reach for a quarterback, but you got a quarterback who does have, some potential. Nothing crazy, but you do have some potential in the quarterback situation. I love the wide receiver pick because it fits, but you don't expect him to be the number one. I love the first round pick. I know it's safe, but sadly, given the issues that are happening for our man, our myth, our legend, Ryan Ramczyk, seems like he's going to be one of those 2017 guys who's the first one to retire. Needed to have that, so you got it. And what's wild about who they picked up in Josiah Ezram is in college, he actually played 2 seasons at defensive line. Like, he was a DT. And then he moved over to offensive line and played right tackle. So, like, he's a raw guy who can probably do a little bit of anything. We'll see how it plays out. So, yeah, I'm pretty excited. I liked Fuaga. I still think that they need to address safety. It's the only thing I really feel like this team needs to, immediately address. That's the biggest need. But overall, I feel like you've done a good job. Now, Mickey Loomis did say that they were going to be very active in the waiver wire and in the post free agency. So I'm going to be keeping my eye out on that. Hopefully y'all are as well. But I really do feel like the New Orleans Saints did a good job in the draft. Now, I do say this all the time. Grading the draft is the stupidest thing in the world because you don't know how these players are going to play out. But in terms of best player available as well as addressing needs, I feel like they did a very, very good job. So, yeah. Very, very, very good job. Brian says the thing I'm most excited about is that we didn't use future picks to address this draft. I think that's a very fair comment. Dupree says, I'm not questioning any offensive players picked because I have faith in the Kubiak setting up this system. It's completely fair. I will say that Kubiak kind of answered a question I had when it come to wide receivers. I realized that we drafted him in the 5th round, but Bub Memes is a traditional split end. He's a little bit shorter, I guess, at 6'1". Usually those guys are about 6'3". So I guess a little bit shorter. But just completely speaking, honestly, as a traditional split end, he's not overly fast. Decent body, good wingspan, plays the position, I think, pretty well. I feel like you are going to see some of the things that we're used to seeing, but at the same time, I think you're going to have a lot more modern twist on it, which is what you were wanting to see. And this leaves Chris Olave to be your quote-unquote number one, but he'll be playing from the flanker position, probably getting your primary targets, but be playing from the flanker position. And then you're going to then have the myth, the legend, Rashid Shaheed in the slot, and probably Bud Memes, but there is some competition there. Keep in mind that he's not the only receiver. There is a man, a myth, a legend himself named A.T. Perry, who shall not be forgotten. But you have between Bud Memes and A.T. Perry competing for that starting split end role. I feel like this is a fantastic spot. If you're a New Orleans Saints fan, hopefully you're happy. And then the Bud Memes coming in there, I feel like he addresses those same concerns in terms of operating that split end, and he's a strong player. Definitely not going to be the guy that you probably rely on over the top, but at the same time, you don't need to. As long as he can take over that deep and intermediate crossing pattern, that's what New Orleans really needs. And whether that's him or A.T. Perry, again, good position to be in. Josh says, did you look at the Broncos draft? How much say do you think Sean had? I think Sean had a lot of say in the Broncos draft. I won't say that I paid as much attention to it as I did New Orleans or even the NFC South. I'm kind of torn on the whole Sean Payton thing. I know this is, I want to hate Sean Payton. I really do. And in some ways, I do hate Sean Payton. But at the same time, he gave us our only Super Bowl so far. So, I have a little bit of loyalty until we win another one. So, I did watch. But I feel like he got the Bo Nix consolation prize because he didn't get the quarterback he wanted. I am very curious how that's going to work out. Obviously, they've gone and built a QB room over there. I'm not sure how much y'all have been following, but they've basically built a brand new QB room over there. And honestly, it's what they should do. But it's Bo Nix, it's Zach Wilson, it's Jared Stidham. It's a whole bunch of young guys fighting to be number one. And I'll be honest, I personally don't have a lot of faith in either of them to be true ones. I really don't. Obviously, he's hoping he finds something. So we'll see. Yeah. I don't know, man. Like I know Chat's probably the same way, but like Chat, how do you feel about Sean Payton? How do y'all feel? Like I feel torn. So I feel torn. Like I want to hate the man for what he did with the whole Miami thing, but at the same time, the Super Bowl, I can't leave it. I know he wanted out. I don't want him back, but part of me roots for him and part of me hates his guts. Part of me roots for him and part of me hates his guts. So we'll just see how things go, I guess. We'll just see how things go. But as far as their draft, I think that they addressed some needs, but I'm still not very confident in them. It was a very Sean Payton draft because if y'all didn't notice, this is what they drafted, right? Quarterback, edge rusher, and Jonah Ellis, which I have no issue with the third round, but then wide receiver, corner, running back, wide receiver, and then a center. I mean, very Sean Payton-esque draft. It's very much a Sean Payton draft. So where you've got Lance Zierlein calling Talise Fuaga the Taylor Decker of this draft, I think that's a compliment. And then you've got him saying that Kool-Aid McKinstry is the AJ Terrell of this draft. I feel like New Orleans came out with a very good group, and I feel like this group is one that shows that the New Orleans Saints still have a good scouting department. That's what I believe. I believe this shows that New Orleans is a good scouting department. Still, Bill says he's glad Sean Payton is gone. Can't fault you at all for that. I really can't. I really can't fault you at all for that. So, yeah. He just says, I don't care anymore about Sean Payton. He wanted out. I'll still root for him. It is what it is. Completely fair. Completely fair. As long as he didn't go to ATL, that's fine, right? Like, it's easy for me to root for the Broncos with Sean Payton there. As long as the man didn't go to Atlanta, it's a hell of a lot easier to support. And as far as Atlanta goes, I'm actually curious, chat, while y'all are sitting here, who do y'all think in the NFC South had the worst draft? Now, the easy thing to say is Atlanta. The easy thing to say is Atlanta. I'm going to tell you this from a... Didn't mean to play that ad. As far as Atlanta goes, I know we want to just dunk all over them because of the Falcons, right? I'll be honest. I don't feel like the Falcons did a bad draft. If the Falcons, if we're talking about building a long-term team, I feel like they made good moves. I know I hate to say that. Like, we're supposed to hate on the Falcons, and yes, it's always F the Falcons. Always. Always F the Falcons. But I really feel like they did the right thing. Now, the whole not telling Kirk Cousins what you were going to do is pretty shady, and I'll give them that. But getting a bridge quarterback who can still play well for 2 years in Kirk Cousins if he stays healthy was smart. Drafting his potential replacement in Michael Penix while also giving him time to fix his flaws is smart. I really like their pick at DT in the second round. I like how they addressed their defensive needs. If you look at what they did, I mean, they basically went and said, hey, we need to get more interior pass rush. And they drafted 2 of them, right? They got Dorless and they got Orhoro. Both of these guys are both 3-tech interior pass rushers, with one of them being the most athletic 3-tech interior pass rusher we saw in the process. Like, quietly, I know it's easy to dunk on them because they took the quarterback in the first round. But I feel like in terms of long-term team building, they made some good decisions, right? I feel like New Orleans had the safest draft that was quality. But in terms of the draft that could have the most long-term impact for their team, assuming, and big assumption here, assuming they get developed right, Atlanta had a good draft. Now, Carolina, I'm not very confident in Carolina. I'm really not. I didn't really like Leggett that much, especially to take him at pick 32. Jonathan Brooks in the middle of the second round. I mean, I guess if that's your thing, not super excited. And then Trevin Wallace in the third at linebacker is an okay pick. But, I don't really feel like Carolina did anything that moved the needle for them this year. But I do think that New Orleans and Atlanta both did things that moved the needle for them this year and for the future. And then Tampa Bay's curious. Like Tampa Bay had to go first round and get Graham Barton because they had to replace Ryan, who went and retired, Ryan Jensen. So they got to rebuild their own line. Also picked up Chris Baswell out of Alabama, who a lot of people liked. And then they got Tyke Smith, the safety. I feel like they address a lot of right now needs as well as potentially going into the future. I feel like New Orleans and Atlanta have the best looking drafts. Antonio says, I can't make sense of why Denver, he might as well should have stayed here, no quarterback, and basically starting over. I really can't answer that for Sean Payton. And there is a thing about starting over. So, it really is. Really is. So Sean Payton talks too much. I wonder if he did the same in New Orleans, quite possibly. TG says the Pampers still paying for last year's draft mistake. I just don't really have a lot of confidence in what they did. I really, really don't. I really, really don't. So I truly, truly, truly do not have a lot of confidence in the Panthers right now. And a lot of that has to go down to their ownership. I don't have much confidence in their ownership group, which is one very, very crazy man. Dupree says, when should we expect film studies on our draft picks? There's a few I'm looking forward to, like Kool-Aid and Fuaga. One, it'll depend on if I can get some tape. If not, we'll be using the broadcast film, which I hate using, but it is what it is. And it comes down to time. I'm going to try to do some this weekend. Today is Tuesday at the time of recording this episode. I might be able to squeeze some in Wednesday. My main job and everything is keeping me pretty busy, but I do want to dive into it, especially on Fuaga, because there's a lot on tape that I like about him. I want to highlight some things. And maybe we'll do one on Spencer Rattler as well. We'll see. Maybe we'll do one on Spencer Rattler as well. But I do plan on doing that. Obviously, that's a staple of this channel. It's always been part of what this channel is, and I want to do more of that type of stuff. Again, I always want to do it. I enjoy it. Whether or not people watch it doesn't even really matter to me. I just freaking enjoy doing it. And Kool-Aid was one of my favorites when I went back and watched some of the stuff myself after the draft. Man, he was just fun to watch. He's not in like he reminds me much more of a Paulson Adebo style player in terms of like how he plays. He's not Marshawn Lattimore like level amazing press player, but I still think he's really, really, really good. And he matches so well in routes. And that's something that Paulson Adebo has gotten good at, is matching routes. And I love that. There's definitely some things that he needs to work on. Some of his handwork, I think, needs to get better, but overall, I like it. Arch says, is Rattler already the best quarterback since we drafted Archie Manning 53 years ago, 1971? No. No. Yeah, negative. Negative. I don't get hype over quarterbacks drafted after the first round. Let's actually see the man a little bit. Let's get some film of him in camp and in preseason, and then we can maybe start looking, hey, let's see. But make no mistake, there's a lot about Rattler that I don't like. I do like him, and because he doesn't have to start right now, I'm not worried about it. There's plenty about him I do not like, but there's plenty about him I do, right? I feel like I have no issue with the fact that he changed to South Carolina because he was at Oklahoma. Then you basically lost the job to the guy that becomes the number one, pick. All that other stuff happens. But there are definitely some details on him that I really struggle with. Brian Scott, thank you for supporting the channel. Greatly appreciate it. The biggest thing I can say for him, there's two things. One, when he gets under pressure, he is really bad about throwing off his back foot. And he does not have like Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers type arm strength. He doesn't. He's got a good arm, but it's not a great arm. But his tendency to just yeet that thing is the same thing that a lot of people got pissed about Jameis Winston doing. Rattler will go on his back foot and yeet it. And in college, yeeting it can work out more often than not. In the NFL, yeeting it does not do that. Because he does not have elite arm talent. I don't know who's lied and said that man has elite arm talent. He has a good arm, but he's not having an elite arm. And some of his tendencies worry me. I remember actually reading Lance Zierlein, who does a lot of this work, or maybe it was Chad Router, and he described it perfectly on his deep balls, that the deep balls start to duck and that they have no drive velocity, which is just a great Great NFL way of saying he doesn't throw the ball super hard. He doesn't drive the ball into where it needs to be in the intermediate and deep ranges of the field. So he's got a good arm, right? I would even, if we were to just say, let's just bring up the name. He's got a Drew Brees arm. He's got a good arm. But if he has the problem of like doing things like pressure, throwing off his back foot where he's not set in his body and stuff, and he's trying to yeet that ball, that's not good. The good news is, though, he doesn't need to start this year. And you trust a guy like Kubiak to develop out the flaws of him and let him process and be a good guy. He can be great. I love quarterbacks who can sit 1 or 2 years in the NFL and become great quarterbacks. I love that strategy. Not everybody else likes it. I love that strategy. And I want to see what he can be when he develops. But if we had drafted him to start week 1, I'm terrified. But I actually love the pick as a 5th round pick. I think it's a steal in the 5th, and you can't wait to see what he could be. He's got a good arm. He's got a good head on his shoulders. I feel like he does a decent job of operating the pocket. I like that. Quick pre-snap processing. Just got to get rid of some of those big things that can be turnover-worthy plays in the NFL. So we'll see how it goes. And don't forget, you got the model, the man, the myth himself, Jake Haener, that he's got to beat out first. He's got to beat out. So did we address the safety situation at all in the draft/UDFA? So great question. Simple answer. I'm going to say yes, just by is the answer yes or no. But am I going to say it's like for sure answered? No. Well, all right. Why am I being flippy floppy? Let me explain why I'm being flippy floppy. Because the New Orleans Saints did add a couple of guys to their roster. All right. In terms of safety, they added Millard Bradford and Lawrence Johnson. Now, many of you are going, who the hell is Millard Bradford and who the hell is Lawrence Johnson? All right. So how about we discuss who these two beautiful men are? And if that makes you uncomfortable, well, that ain't my damn problem. So anyway, let's talk. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm just trying to mess with y'all a little bit. It's fun. If I'm not going to mess with you, who is? I've got to be the one that does it. It's all good. Anyway, let's talk about Millard first. So at the combine, he ran a 4.4. Good numbers. He actually put up really good athletic scores. And I think one thing that you notice about the New Orleans Saints, they love a high RAS score, and he put up a high RAS score. Now, he's a bit of a smaller guy, right? Now, he's a rangier safety. I'm going to play more of that free safety spot if he ever gets on the field. If you didn't watch him at TCU, no big deal, but had over a 10-foot broad jump, 38.5-inch vertical, had a 4.42 40-yard dash. I mean, he's quick. He's got good eyes. I think he's got decent burst. He undercuts routes really well, which means that he can play like the robber situation and do that pretty well. I think he's very aggressive, even though he's very small. He also, because he's a smaller guy, he has a really good bend in his knees and his hips, so his ankle and hip flexion is good. He can swivel and turn to match routes. He has good things about him. He has plenty of bad things too, right? There's a reason he went UDFA. So they did get that, and that's definitely an answer, right? Like that is a player that they brought in. But I don't feel like you can just sit there and say, oh, UDFA, we've got it made. Now, the other one I'm actually less confident in is Lawrence Johnson. I don't really even see him making the roster. He's got good size, decent speed, but he's actually the exact opposite of Miller, because I feel like he's very tight in his hips. He doesn't move super well. He doesn't just seem as fluid. So if I had to pick who was going to make it out of those two safeties, it'd be Lawrence Johnson, and we'll see how that plays out. I'm sorry, Millard Bradford, and we'll see how that plays out. But I still think no matter what, New Orleans needs to address the safety position. I feel like the safety position is very much still in flux. You do have a veteran that you can rely on for a little bit longer, but just as a whole, I feel like there's just too many question marks there to get too excited, right? I feel like that's an issue. Anyway, that's my thoughts. That's my thoughts. How old is Carr now? Carr is going to be, let's pull up Derek Carr's age real quick. Carr this year, when the field starts, like when he's on the field, 33 years old. It's not that bad. In theory, that's a good 5 more years of NFL playing time left, for a solid quarterback. By comparison, Kirk, been in the league longer than you realize. Cousins turns 36 this year. Turns 36 this year. So, Godfather, dude, it's been a while since I've seen you. Good to see you. Says drafting a project wide receiver when Johnny Miller was available, shameful. I don't have actually any issue with drafting Bud in the 5th round, but okay. Drafting another O-lineman, that will be a bust. And drafting Sideshow Bob, hoping he's mini Mahomes. Horrible draft once again. Well, you know what, Godfather? I'm glad that you're here. It's actually not a Who Dat Confessional without Godfather's pessimism. And it's good to see you because it's been a while. It's been a while. You want to go ahead and do that bet? Because I bet the Saints win more than 3 games. And because I have had way too many bills this year, how much are you willing to pay me if the Saints win more than 3 games? I'll finally take your bet. I never bet, but I'm starting to hurt on freaking medical bills. So you let me know, Godfather. It's good to see you, man. I hope you're having a fantastic spring, and I hope the life and the whatever you got going on is doing well. I really do. So, yeah, he did call him Sideshow Bob. It was funny. I will say that. That is really funny. Poor Spencer Rattler calling that man Sideshow Bob is pretty funny. But it's good to see you, Godfather. It's good to see everybody here. Would it be a problem going the season with our current starting safeties? Depreach, I'll be honest, not to be a Godfather here, but I would say that if you went in with this is your current starting safety group, I would say that would be the positional group I would say is the weakest on paper right now. Not being a hater, but if I had to pick a positional group that's the weakest on paper, it's safety. Because it's Honey Badger, Jordan Howden is your, kind of written in starter, and then it's JT Gray, who's just a special teamer. No offense, JT. Jonathan Abram, the veteran from 400 years ago, and then the 2 UDFAs I just mentioned. I would say that's the weakest group in the building right now. I'd say that's the weakest group in the building. So, and that's saying something with, all the offensive line woes that we've had. But I would say safety is the weakest. Calvin says punter's the weakest. Well, good news. They brought in competition for the punter. So you got Matthew Hayball coming in. What y'all know about that Hayball? Also, side note, gotta be the whitest name in the world. I'm sorry. I shouldn't say stuff like that. But that's the whitest name in the world. Matthew Hayball. I'm sorry. I don't try to make things about race. Some things are just accurate. Some stereotypes just fit. A man named Matthew Hayball is the whitest name I've ever heard in my life. But, yeah. They brought him in. They brought him in to be competition for the punting position with Lou Headley. So we'll see how that works out. Alex says Carr's had some pretty serious injuries. He broke his back and I think his shoulder surgery. Yeah, but guess what? So did Drew Brees. Any chance Alante or Kool-Aid play safety? Doubtful. Very much doubt. With all the holes in the O-line, rather trading back in the 2nd round, add more O-line help over the DB. Also rather move 5th round picks to get better prospects in 3rd, 4th. You just really can't move 5th rounders into a 3rd. It's just not. You just can't really do that. There's just not enough value there. But I will say that you did get your right tackle of the future, in theory, with Talise Fuaga, which is good. And I actually trust the right side of this offensive line right now. McCoy, Ruiz, Fuaga, I trust. Now, if Ram is somehow ready to play, there's an argument to be made for asking Fuaga to try left tackle. We'll see how that plays out. Also, I've said it before, always, always, always give 3 years for development. Maybe magic happens with a new offensive line coach and Penning actually is semi-decent this year. We'll see. Godfather says, I called Full Metal Jacket being a bust last year as soon as we made the pick. You've called many things, Godfather. You also said the team wouldn't win more than 4 games. So we're all allowed to pick. But you could be right. Could be right. Smith versus Groupie. You're rooting for the Irish guy? Cool. I mean, I have no problem with Blake Groupie, to be honest with you. Just personally. But, I mean, all I care about is who's good. That's all I care about, who's good. How well can Ram play on the left? We don't even know if the man can play on the right. So, I don't know if Ram's going to play anymore. We'll see. We'll see. I really don't know if he's going to play. I'm not trying to be a hater. I'm just saying that he was behind schedule a month ago, and then they went and drafted a premier, like one of the, if not the best right tackle in the draft. And we can debate that if we want to, but I do believe Fuaga is arguably the best right tackle in this draft. Seems like the writing on the wall is there for Ram. I think he's going to retire. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Now, this upcoming Thursday, y'all better be here, because here's what's going to happen. My tale, I'm going to tell y'all all the things about what I think about the Pelicans. We're going to talk about Saints too, but I got to get some things off my chest about the Pels. And I want y'all to be here with me. I want you to be here with me through it, if you would be so kind. But I got to say some things. Who dat? God bless. I appreciate every single one of you. We're going to try to get some film studies in this week. We'll see you on the next one. Deuces. That's me. We out.